Commander Zixtel floated in his crystalline command chamber, watching the blue and green planets spin slowly on the viewing screen. His transparent body shimmered with nervous energy as he studied the world below. According to the Galactic Defense Coalition database, this was Earth, a Class 1-2 death world, the most dangerous type of planet in the galaxy. "Sir, we are receiving another transmission from the planet's surface," reported his communications officer, her voice tinkling like broken glass through the ship's speakers. "Play it," Zixtel commanded, though every instinct told him to retreat to a safe distance. The screen flickered, and a human face appeared. The creature had strange, soft features and tiny eyes that somehow managed to look both friendly and predatory at the same time. When it opened its mouth to speak, Zixtel could see rows of sharp teeth designed for tearing meat. "Greetings, Galactic Defense Coalition vessel," the human said in surprisingly clear galactic common language. "This is Captain Sarah Chen of the United Earth Defense Force. We are honored by your visit and grateful for the invitation to join your alliance." Zixtel exchanged glances with his tactical officer. In 300 years of first contact protocols, no species from a Class 1-2 death world had ever spoken so calmly. Most were either dead, dying, or screaming in terror when Coalition ships arrived. "Captain Chen," Zixtel replied carefully, "we must inform you that integration into the Coalition requires certain accommodations. Your world is classified as extremely hostile. We understand if your people need immediate evacuation to safer environments." The human made a strange noise that took Zixtel a moment to recognize as laughter. "Thank you for your concern, Commander, but we're quite comfortable here. Earth is our home. We've adapted well to local conditions." "Adapted?" Zixtel's voice cracked with disbelief. "Captain, your world has gravity 3 times the galactic standard. Your atmosphere contains toxic oxygen in lethal concentrations. Your weather systems include frozen precipitation, electrical storms, and wind speeds that would destroy most Coalition vessels. The very ground moves unexpectedly. How could any intelligent species adapt to such conditions?" "Of Lo-Ming," Captain Chen smiled, revealing more of those disturbing teeth. "Well, Commander, we've had about 200,000 years to get used to it. Plus, these conditions have made us rather good at solving problems under pressure." Zixtel felt a chill run through his crystalline form. 200,000 years? Most Coalition species had only achieved spaceflight within the last 10,000 years. How had these creatures survived so long on such a hostile world? "We would be honored to contribute to Coalition peacekeeping efforts," Captain Chen continued. "Our military is eager to serve alongside galactic forces. We understand you need soldiers for various conflicts across the galaxy." The connection ended, leaving Zixtel staring at a blank screen. His tactical officer, Sub-Commander Veltar, leaned forward. Veltar was a Korthak, one of the galaxy's most feared warrior races. His thick, armored hide and powerful muscles had made his people legendary in battle. Yet even Veltar looked concerned. "Commander," Veltar growled, his voice like grinding stone, "no Deathworld species has ever produced viable military personnel. The stress of leaving their home environment typically kills them during transport. Those who survive are usually too damaged psychologically to function in civilized warfare." Zixtel nodded. He remembered the reports. The Grendali from the Class 1-1 death world of Morte had seemed promising until they discovered that the creatures needed to consume live prey daily to maintain their sanity. The Thorax warriors from Razorclaw Prime had impressive physical capabilities, but went into catatonic shock when removed from their predator-rich environment. "Perhaps we should conduct the standard evaluation," suggested his science officer. "If they wish to contribute military personnel, we should assess their capabilities before integration." 3 days later, Zixtel found himself in the Coalition Council chambers on Harmony Station. The massive circular room housed representatives from 47 different species, each adapted to their specific environmental needs. General Claxon, the Coalition's chief military strategist, rose from his position at the center of the chamber. General Claxon was a Thrizari, an ancient species known for their brilliant tactical minds and cautious nature. His 6 eyes moved independently, As he reviewed the data streaming across his personal display, "The humans present an interesting case," General Claxon announced, his mechanical voice echoing through the chamber. "They claim to have 8 billion individuals on their homeworld, all apparently thriving in Class 1-2 conditions. They have developed advanced technology, including primitive faster-than-light communication. Most unusual for a Deathworld species." Representative Quixara of the Etherian Council spoke next, her voice like singing crystal. "What concerns me is their apparent enthusiasm for military service. Deathworld species are typically desperate for rescue, not eager to engage in further conflict. They may not understand what military service entails," suggested the hive mind representative, Drone Prime 7. Her insectoid form clicked thoughtfully. "Perhaps they believe military service means protection and safety, rather than combat deployment." General Claxon's eyes focused simultaneously on the human data file. "According to their transmissions, they have extensive experience with something they call warfare. They reference thousands of years of conflicts among their own species. This suggests they may already understand combat concepts." A nervous murmur rippled through the chamber. Interspecies conflict was almost unknown in the galaxy. Most coalition species had achieved peaceful unity before developing space travel. The idea of a species that fought among itself for thousands of years was deeply disturbing. "I recommend we proceed with standard evaluation protocols," General Claxon concluded. "We will send a military assessment team to observe their capabilities and determine appropriate integration procedures. If they prove unsuitable for standard military service, we can assign them to support roles or colonization projects on safer worlds." The vote was unanimous. Within a week, a small team of military observers would travel to Earth to assess human capabilities. The team would be led by Sub-Commander Veltar, whose experience with warrior cultures would be invaluable. As the council session ended, Zixtel reviewed the mission parameters. The assessment should take only a few days. They would observe human military organization, technology, and training procedures. Then they would design an appropriate integration program to bring human personnel up to coalition standards. It seemed straightforward enough. After all, how dangerous could the military training be for a species that had barely achieved spaceflight? Zixtel filed his mission report and began preparations for departure. He had no way of knowing that he was about to witness something that would change the coalition's understanding of warfare, training, and the true meaning of survival. The coalition assessment team materialized on Earth's surface in a shimmer of blue light. Sub-Commander Veltar stepped forward first, his massive Korthak frame towering over the Human Reception Committee. His armored hide gleamed in the strange yellow sunlight, and his forearms moved restlessly as he scanned the area for threats. Commander Zixtel floated beside him, his crystalline body reflecting the alien sky. The third member of their team, Drone Prime 7, clicked nervously as her compound eyes adjusted to the harsh lighting conditions. Captain Sarah Chen approached them with that unsettling human smile. "Welcome to Earth, gentlemen, and lady," she added, nodding to Drone Prime 7. "We're excited to show you our military capabilities." Veltar grunted, which was his species' version of polite acknowledgement. In truth, he was already impressed. The humans had constructed what appeared to be a functional military base in this hostile environment. The structures were primitive but solid, built to withstand the planet's violent weather patterns. "We understand you wish to evaluate our readiness for coalition service," Captain Chen continued. "We've prepared a demonstration of our standard military training procedures. This should give you a good overview of human capabilities." "Standard training?" Drone Prime 7's voice buzzed with curiosity. "You mean the procedures used to prepare your warriors for battle?" "Not exactly," Captain Chen replied. "This is basic training. It's what we do with civilians who want to become soldiers. The real military training comes later." Veltar's confidence grew. Basic training was familiar territory. Every coalition species had some form of preliminary instruction for new recruits. Usually, it involved learning to operate equipment, understanding chain of command, and basic physical conditioning appropriate for each species' capabilities. "We would like to observe this basic training," Veltar announced. "My people have trained warriors for over 5,000 years. I am curious to see how Deathworld inhabitants prepare for military service." Captain Chen's smile widened slightly. Excellent. We have a group starting their training cycle today at Fort Moore. It's one of our gentler facilities. We thought it would be a good introduction to human military culture. As they traveled to the training facility, Zixtel observed the human environment with growing unease. The gravity was crushing, the air thick with dangerous oxygen, and the temperature fluctuated wildly. Yet the humans moved through these conditions as if they were perfectly normal. Tell me, Zixtel asked carefully, what is the survival rate for your basic training? Oh, very high, Captain Chen replied cheerfully. We rarely lose anyone during the initial training period. Maybe 1 or 2 per 1,000. Usually from pre-existing medical conditions we missed during screening. Drone Prime 7's mandibles clicked in confusion. You lose recruits during basic training? Well, yes, occasionally. The human body has limits, even with our medical screening. But don't worry, we've made the training much safer over the years. It used to be much more dangerous. The aliens exchanged glances. Coalition basic training had a 0 mortality rate. The idea of losing recruits during preliminary instruction was barbaric. They arrived at Fort Moore as the local star was rising. The facility sprawled across several square kilometers of cleared land. Primitive-looking buildings housed what Captain Chen explained were classrooms, medical facilities, and barracks for the trainees. The new recruits arrived today, Captain Chen explained as they approached a large flat area. They're civilians from all over Earth. Different backgrounds, different physical capabilities. Over the next several weeks, we'll transform them into soldiers. Veltar nodded approvingly. This sounded reasonable. Coalition training programs typically lasted several months and focused on gradual skill development. How long is your basic training period? He asked. This particular program runs about 10 weeks, Captain Chen replied. Though some of our more specialized training can take much longer. 10 weeks seemed short to Veltar, but perhaps humans learned quickly. He watched as a group of vehicles arrived and began discharging passengers. The new recruits looked remarkably ordinary. Young humans of various sizes and shapes, carrying simple bags of personal belongings. They looked soft, vulnerable. Nothing like the hardened warriors Veltar had expected from a Deathworld species. They seem very young, observed Zixtel. Most are between 18 and 25 years old, Captain Chen confirmed. Though we accept recruits up to age 35 in some cases. Drone Prime 7 calculated quickly. By galactic standards, these humans were barely adults. Most coalition species didn't begin military training until they reached full physical and mental maturity, usually around 40 standard years. You train children? She asked, horrified. Adults, Captain Chen corrected. Though I suppose they might seem young to your longer-lived species. Humans reach full physical development earlier than most galactic races. A loud sound echoed across the training area, something between a roar and a mechanical noise. The alien observers jumped, but the human recruits seemed to expect it. They quickly formed rough lines and faced toward a raised platform where several humans in identical clothing had appeared. Those are the drill instructors, Captain Chen explained quietly. They'll be responsible for training these recruits over the next 10 weeks. Veltar studied the instructors with professional interest. They appeared to be seasoned warriors. Their posture and movement suggested extensive combat experience. Their voices carried easily across the training area as they began addressing the new recruits. What they said, however, made no sense to the alien observers. Listen up, maggots, shouted the lead instructor. For the next 10 weeks, your life belongs to me. You will eat when I say eat, sleep when I say sleep, and breathe when I give you permission. The recruits stood silently, which Veltar found strange. In Korthak training, instructors and students maintained mutual respect. Experienced warriors shared knowledge with younger ones in an atmosphere of disciplined learning. You are nothing, the instructor continued. You are less than nothing. You are the lowest form of life on this planet. And it is my job to build you into something that might one day deserve to call itself a soldier. Drone Prime 7's antennae twitched with distress. Commander Chen, she whispered. Why is your instructor insulting the recruits? How does verbal abuse contribute to military education? Captain Chen looked thoughtful. It's part of the psychological conditioning. We need to break down their civilian mindset and rebuild their mental framework for military service. It's traditional. Traditional? Zixtel's voice cracked with disbelief. You deliberately cause psychological trauma as part of basic education? It's not trauma, Captain Chen said quickly. It's stress inoculation. We expose them to controlled stress so they can handle real stress later. You know, in combat situations, the alien observers watched in growing confusion as the drill instructors continued their verbal assault on the recruits. The young humans simply stood there and took it, their faces showing various degrees of fear, confusion, and determination. This is your new reality, the lead instructor roared. The next 10 weeks will be the longest 10 weeks of your miserable lives. Some of you will quit. Some of you will break, but those who survive will earn the right to call themselves United States Marines. Veltar felt a chill run down his armored spine. This wasn't education. It was some form of ritualized abuse. And according to Captain Chen, this was the gentle introduction to human military culture. What, he wondered with growing dread, did advanced human military training look like? If this was considered basic, as the morning sun climbed higher in the alien sky, the drill instructors began organizing the recruits for their first training activities. The alien observers prepared to witness what humans called basic military education. None of them were prepared for what they were about to see. The first shock came at what humans called 0400 hours. Commander Zixtel jerked awake in his crystalline rest chamber as terrible sounds echoed across the human training facility. Sirens wailed, lights blazed, and human voices shouted commands in the pre-dawn darkness. What's happening? Drone Prime 7 clicked frantically, her compound eyes struggling to adjust to the harsh illumination. Are we under attack? Captain Chen appeared at their quarters, looking remarkably alert for someone who had been awakened at such an unnatural hour. Good morning. The recruits are starting their first day of physical training. Would you like to observe? Sub-Commander Veltar stumbled out of his sleeping alcove, his usually perfect posture disrupted by confusion. It's still dark, he growled. Why are they training before sunrise? Standard procedure, Captain Chen replied cheerfully. Physical training starts at 0430 every day. We find it builds character. The alien observers followed Captain Chen outside, where an extraordinary sight awaited them. Hundreds of human recruits stood in perfect lines, dressed in identical gray clothing. Vapor rose from their bodies in the cold air, and their faces showed the vacant stare of people who had been violently awakened from sleep. Today we begin your physical conditioning, shouted a drill instructor. You will run 3 miles, perform calisthenics, and complete the obstacle course before breakfast. Move out. The recruits began running in formation, their feet hitting the ground in unison. The alien observers watched in stunned silence as the column of humans disappeared into the darkness, their voices echoing back as they chanted cadences. They're running in the dark, Zixtel whispered. In these gravity conditions, without any safety equipment, 3 miles is approximately 4.8 kilometers. Drone Prime 7 calculated quickly. In this gravity, that would require energy expenditure equivalent to. She stopped calculating as the implications hit her. No coalition species would attempt such physical exertion without proper conditioning and safety protocols. These humans were doing it as part of their daily routine. Don't they get injured? Veltar asked, genuinely concerned. Sometimes, Captain Chen admitted. Twisted ankles, muscle strains, that sort of thing. Our medical staff keeps busy. But it's all part of the conditioning process. 20 minutes later, the recruits returned, their breathing visible in the cold air. Sweat covered their faces despite the low temperature. Several looked like they might collapse, but none of them stopped moving. Calisthenics, the drill instructor commanded. Push-ups. Begin! The recruits dropped to the ground and began lifting their bodies with their arms. Up and down, up and down. While drill instructors walked among them shouting encouragement and insults in equal measure. Down, up, down, up. If you can't do a proper push-up, how do you expect to carry a wounded comrade to safety? Veltar counted silently. 10 repetitions. 20. 30. His own species was renowned for physical strength, but even Korthak warriors would struggle with this many repetitions in such gravity. 50. 60. 70. This is impossible, he muttered. They'll injure themselves. Sit-ups, the instructor commanded, and immediately the recruits flipped over and began a new exercise, lifting their torsos repeatedly while someone held their feet. Drone Prime 7's medical subroutines began calculating stress factors. Commander Chen, she said urgently, their cardiovascular systems must be approaching critical limits. Should we not intervene? They're fine, Captain Chen assured her. This is light exercise by our standards. Wait until you see advanced conditioning. After an hour of what humans called calisthenics, the recruits moved to something called an obstacle course. Zixtel watched in growing horror as they climbed over walls, crawled under barriers, swung from ropes, and ran through obstacle after obstacle designed to stress their physical capabilities to the breaking point. Several recruits fell. They picked themselves up and continued. One young human's hands were bleeding from rope burns. He kept climbing. Shouldn't they receive medical attention? Zixtel asked weakly. For rope burn? Captain Chen looked surprised. That's barely an injury. They'll develop calluses in a few days, but the real shock was yet to come. After breakfast, which the recruits earned only by completing their morning exercises, the drill instructors led them to what appeared to be a combat training area. Veltar perked up with interest. Finally, something he could understand. Combat training was universal among military species. Then he saw the weapons. Those are projectile weapons, he said, his voice tight with disbelief. Actual chemical propellant firearms. Standard infantry rifles, Captain Chen confirmed. Each recruit will learn to operate, maintain, and qualify with individual weapons. But they're designed to kill, Drone Prime 7 protested. Why are you giving lethal weapons to untrained civilians? How else would they learn to use them? Captain Chen seemed genuinely puzzled by the question. Veltar watched as instructors demonstrated proper handling of the weapons. The recruits were then given their own rifles and began learning basic operations. Loading, unloading, aiming, safety procedures. It seemed reasonable enough. Then came weapons qualification. Live fire exercise, an instructor announced. You will advance through the course while engaging targets. Keep your heads down and follow safety protocols. The alien observers found themselves behind a protective barrier as human recruits began moving through an area filled with targets. The sound of gunfire echoed across the training ground as young humans practiced shooting while moving, taking cover, and advancing under simulated combat conditions. They're using actual ammunition, Zixtel said faintly. Lethal projectiles. During basic training, how else would they learn combat marksmanship? Captain Chen asked. But Veltar wasn't listening anymore. He was staring at another training area, where recruits were crawling on their bellies under strands of razor wire while machine guns fired over their heads. Are those live rounds? He whispered. Captain Chen followed his gaze. Oh, that's the low crawl exercise. Yes, those are live rounds. But they're firing well over the recruits' heads, perfectly safe as long as everyone follows proper procedure. Perfectly safe? Drone Prime 7's voice rose to a shriek. You're firing lethal weapons over the heads of untrained personnel. It builds confidence under fire, Captain Chen explained patiently. They need to learn that they can function even when people are shooting at them. Veltar sat down heavily on a nearby bench, his powerful legs no longer able to support him. He was a Korthak warrior, trained from childhood in the arts of war. He had fought in 3 separate galactic conflicts and earned numerous decorations for valor under fire. He had never trained with live ammunition during basic instruction. The day continued with more revelations. Hand-to-hand combat training where recruits actually struck each other. Survival exercises that deliberately deprived them of food and sleep. Endurance tests that pushed human physiology to its limits. This isn't training, Zixtel said as evening approached. This is systematic torture. I don't understand, Captain Chen replied, looking genuinely confused. This is basic training. We're being very gentle with them. Wait until you see Advanced Infantry School or Special Forces Selection. That's when the real training begins. As the sun set over the human training facility, the alien observers retreated to their quarters in stunned silence. They had come to evaluate human military capabilities and found something beyond their comprehension. These weren't warriors being trained for battle. These were ordinary civilians being systematically transformed into something that could survive conditions that would kill experienced coalition soldiers. And according to their human guide, this was just the beginning. Veltar activated his emergency communicator and began composing a priority message to General Claxon. The message was brief but urgent. Request immediate evacuation. Human basic training exceeds all known parameters for military conditioning. Recommend species classification review. We may have seriously underestimated Deathworld capabilities. As he sent the message, he could hear the human recruits outside, singing as they marched to their evening meal. They sounded happy. That, perhaps, was the most terrifying thing of all. Sub-Commander Veltar had not slept in 3 days. The Korthak warrior sat hunched over his personal data terminal in the Coalition observation ship, his forearms working frantically as he accessed Earth's historical databases. What he found there made his earlier concerns about human basic training seem almost trivial. "Commander," he called to Zixtel, his voice hoarse with exhaustion and disbelief. "You need to see this." Zixtel floated over, his crystalline form dimmed with stress. Drone Prime. Seven clicked nervously beside them, her compound eyes reflecting the data streams scrolling across the screen. "I've been researching human military history," Veltar continued, "trying to understand why their basic training is so intense." He activated a holographic display that showed a timeline of human conflicts. The data stretched back thousands of years in an unbroken chain of warfare, conquest, and survival. "Look at this," Veltar whispered. "They've been fighting continuously for their entire recorded history. Not just occasional conflicts. Constant warfare. Sometimes, multiple wars happening at the same time." Zixtel studied the data with growing horror. "This can't be accurate. No species could survive this level of internal conflict." "It gets worse," Veltar said, pulling up specific historical records. "Look at what they call the World Wars. Global conflicts involving hundreds of millions of combatants, industrial-scale killing using weapons designed specifically to maximize casualties." Drone Prime 7's medical subroutines began processing the casualty figures. "These numbers are impossible. 60 million deaths in a single conflict? How did their species survive?" "Because they kept breeding and fighting," Veltar replied grimly. "Look at this. While they were conducting these massive wars, their population kept growing. They were literally out-reproducing their own casualties." The alien observers fell silent as they absorbed the implications. Coalition species had occasional conflicts, but nothing approaching the scale and intensity of human warfare. Most galactic conflicts were resolved through diplomacy or brief, limited engagements. "This explains the training," Zixtel said slowly. "They're not preparing for theoretical conflicts. They're preparing for the kind of warfare they've been conducting for millennia." Veltar activated another file. "I found records of something called Hell Week, an advanced training program that makes basic training look gentle. Listen to this description." He read from the file. "Candidates receive approximately 4 hours of sleep total over 5.5 days, while participating in constant physical activity. Training includes surf torture in near-freezing water, obstacle course navigation while carrying heavy equipment, and psychological stress testing, designed to eliminate 75% of participants." "Eliminate?" Drone Prime 7's voice cracked. "You mean kill?" "No," Veltar replied, checking the translation. "Eliminate means they quit. They choose to stop. Apparently, most humans voluntarily give up when faced with these conditions. But some don't," Zixtel observed quietly. "Some humans complete this training. Yes, and those who complete it become what humans call Special Operations Forces. Veltar pulled up another file. The training I described is just the selection process. The actual training comes afterward. The three alien observers stared at the data in stunned silence. They had been watching basic training, the gentlest introduction to human military culture. Beyond that lay layers of increasingly intense preparation that seemed designed to transform ordinary humans into something approaching living weapons. A soft chime indicated an incoming message from Captain Chen. "Good morning. I hope you're settling in well. Today we're observing advanced combat training. The recruits will be participating in war games using simulated ammunition and tactical scenarios." Veltar quickly composed a response. "Captain Chen, we need to discuss the broader context of your military training. Could we perhaps review some historical background first?" "Of course. I'd be happy to brief you on our military traditions. Shall we meet in the conference room?" An hour later, Captain Chen sat across from the alien observers, with a cup of what she called coffee. Apparently a stimulant beverage that humans consumed regularly. The aliens noted that she showed no signs of the stress that would normally affect coalition personnel after exposure to the training they had witnessed. "We've been reviewing your historical records," Zixtel began carefully. "Your species seems to have extensive experience with warfare." "Oh yes," Captain Chen replied cheerfully. "Humans have always been good at fighting. It's one of our defining characteristics, really." "But why?" Drone Prime 7 asked desperately. "Why do you fight so much?" "Most species achieve peace before developing advanced technology." Captain Chen considered the question seriously. "I think it's partly environmental. Earth is a challenging place to live. We've had to compete for resources, deal with natural disasters, survive climate changes, defend against predators. Fighting isn't something we chose. It's something we had to learn to survive." "But you fight each other," Veltar protested. "Your own species." "True," Captain Chen acknowledged, "though that's decreased significantly in recent decades. We've mostly moved past large-scale wars between nations. These days, our military focuses more on peacekeeping and disaster relief." "Disaster relief?" Zixtel asked. "Natural catastrophes. Earthquakes, hurricanes, floods, volcanic eruptions. Earth throws a lot of dangerous situations at us. Our military is often the first to respond because we have the training and equipment to operate in hostile environments." The alien observers exchanged glances. They were beginning to understand that human military training wasn't just about fighting other humans. It was about surviving on a planet that was actively trying to kill them. "Captain," Veltar said slowly, "when you say this is basic training, what exactly do you mean? What comes after basic training?" Captain Chen's expression grew serious. "Well, basic training teaches fundamental skills and mental conditioning. After that, soldiers go to their specific job training. Infantry school, armored vehicle operations, communications, medical, engineering. That can take anywhere from a few weeks to several months, depending on the specialty. And after that, then they join operational units where they receive ongoing training in advanced tactics, specialized equipment, and unit-specific skills. Most soldiers continue training throughout their careers." "What about the Special Operations Forces?" Drone Prime 7 asked quietly. Captain Chen's expression shifted to something approaching respect. "That's different. Special operations selection and training can take years. The psychological and physical requirements are extreme, even by our standards. Not many people can handle it." "What kind of missions require such extensive preparation?" Zixtel asked. "Operations in hostile environments, rescue missions behind enemy lines, counter-terrorism, situations where failure means death and success requires people who simply will not quit no matter what happens to them." Captain Chen paused, studying their faces. "I'm beginning to think you find our training methods unusual." "Unusual?" Veltar laughed, a sound like grinding stone. "Captain, your basic training would hospitalize most coalition military personnel. Your special operations selection would probably kill them." Captain Chen looked genuinely surprised. "Really? But you're all warrior species. The Korthak are famous throughout the galaxy for their military prowess. We train for combat, Veltar replied. We learn tactics, weapons, strategy. We condition our bodies and minds for warfare. But we don't deliberately torture ourselves as part of the process. It's not torture, Captain Chen protested. It's preparation. How can you prepare for extreme stress without experiencing extreme stress? By simulating it safely, Zixtel suggested. You can't simulate real stress, Captain Chen replied firmly. You can approximate it. But unless there's actual risk, actual discomfort, actual consequences for failure, it's just playing games. Our training is effective because it's real. As the meeting ended and they returned to observe more human training exercises, the alien observers realized they faced a fundamental problem. They had come to evaluate human military capabilities and determine how to integrate humans into coalition forces. What they had discovered was that humans weren't potential coalition soldiers. They were something entirely different. A species that had spent millennia perfecting the art of surviving and fighting in conditions that would destroy other sapient beings. The question was no longer how to bring humans up to coalition military standards. The question was whether coalition military standards were adequate for a galaxy that contained humans. That evening, Veltar sent another message to General Klaxon. Recommend emergency session of Coalition Council. Human military capabilities exceed all known parameters. Current threat assessment protocols may be inadequate. As he composed the message, he could hear human recruits outside, singing as they prepared for another day of training that would have broken him completely. He was beginning to understand why other species chose to surrender when they learned humans were involved in galactic conflicts. The emergency session of the Coalition Council was unlike anything in galactic history. General Klaxon stood in the center of the massive chamber, his 6 eyes moving independently as he reviewed the reports streaming in from across Coalition space. Representatives from 47 species filled their environmental pods, but the usual diplomatic chatter was absent. Everyone was focused on the data from Earth. The footage has been classified at the highest security levels, General Klaxon announced, his mechanical voice echoing through the chamber. Several council members required medical intervention after viewing recordings of human basic training. Representative Quixara of the Etherian Council spoke first, her crystalline voice trembling with distress. General, we've reviewed the preliminary reports. Surely there has been some error in translation or cultural interpretation. I'm afraid not, General Klaxon replied grimly. Multiple observation teams have confirmed the data. What humans call basic training exceeds the stress parameters of our most elite military programs. Commander Zixtel materialized in the witness chamber, his crystalline form noticeably dimmed from his recent experiences. Council members, I have personally observed human training procedures. The reports are accurate. Impossible, growled Representative Thorgrim of the Korthak Assembly. No species could survive such conditioning without massive casualties. That's what we thought, Zixtel replied. But humans have a 98% survival rate during basic training. They consider this normal and acceptable. A murmur of disbelief rippled through the chamber. Even the insectoid hive representatives clicked nervously, their collective consciousness struggling to process the implications. The real concern, General Klaxon continued, is what this reveals about human military capabilities. If their basic training exceeds our advanced programs, what must their elite forces be capable of? Subcommander Veltar appeared in the witness chamber beside Zixtel. The proud Korthak warrior looked like he had aged decades in the past week. Council members, I have reviewed human military history. They have been conducting warfare continuously for thousands of years. Their training isn't theoretical. It's based on actual combat experience. Furthermore, he continued, his voice growing stronger, the humans we observed were not their elite soldiers. They were ordinary civilians being prepared for basic military service. Captain Chen informed us that the humans selected for coalition integration were chosen for their diplomatic skills, not their combat abilities. The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. If these were humanity's diplomats and liaison personnel, what were their actual warriors like? General Claxon activated a holographic display showing recent intelligence reports. We've received additional information that puts the human situation in perspective. 3 hostile factions have requested immediate peace negotiations upon learning of human involvement in coalition operations. Which factions? Asked Representative Quixara. The Zorithian Empire, the Malachar Confederacy, and the Void Walkers. Another shocked silence. These were 3 of the most aggressive militaristic species in the galaxy. The Zorithians had been raiding coalition shipping for decades. The Malachar had never backed down from a fight in their recorded history. The Void Walkers were considered unstoppable in combat. They're requesting peace negotiations without ever having fought humans? Representative Thorgrim asked in disbelief. They've analyzed the same data we have, General Claxon replied. Apparently, the prospect of facing warriors trained under Earth conditions is unappealing. Drone Prime 7 materialized in the chamber, her insectoid form twitching with nervous energy. Council members, I have conducted a complete analysis of human training methodologies. Their approach violates 17 galactic conventions on the humane treatment of military personnel. But it works, Veltar interrupted. I've never seen soldiers more prepared for adverse conditions. They train in environments that would kill most of us, using stress levels that would break our minds, preparing for scenarios we can't even imagine. Captain Sarah Chen appeared in the human representative chamber, looking perfectly comfortable despite the alien environment. Her presence caused a ripple of nervous energy through the assembled delegates. Captain Chen, General Claxon said formally, the Coalition Council has reviewed your species' military capabilities. We need to discuss appropriate integration procedures. Of course, General, Captain Chen replied with that unsettling human smile. We're eager to serve alongside galactic forces. Actually, General Claxon continued carefully, we think humans might be better suited to specialized roles. What kind of specialized roles? Strategic deterrent operations. Extreme environment missions. Situations that require unique qualifications. Captain Chen's expression grew thoughtful. I see. You want us to handle the missions other species can't complete. In essence, yes. That's very flattering. But I should point out that the humans you've observed aren't our most capable personnel. They were selected for their people skills and cultural adaptability. The alien delegates exchanged worried glances. Their most capable personnel? Captain, Representative Quixara asked weakly, if these aren't your most capable soldiers, who are? Well, there are the Rangers, the SEALs, Delta Force, Special Air Service, Spetsnaz, various special operations units from different nations. Then there are our intelligence operatives, cyber warfare specialists, and combat engineers. Captain Chen paused, noting the expressions of growing alarm around the chamber. Oh, and the Space Marines, of course, though they're still in development. In the carding. Thanks for watching. In the placing. Space Marines? General Claxon's voice cracked slightly. Military personnel specifically trained for zero-gravity combat and hostile environment operations. We figured if we're going to be operating in space, we should prepare properly. Veltar made a strangled sound that might have been laughter or despair. General Claxon called for a brief recess, during which the alien delegates huddled in emergency session. When the council reconvened, their decision was unanimous. Captain Chen, General Claxon announced, the Coalition Council has approved humanity for membership with a special classification. You will be designated as a strategic deterrent species. What does that mean? It means, General Claxon replied, that simply announcing human involvement in coalition operations serves as a diplomatic tool. Most hostile factions would rather negotiate than face the possibility of combat with Deathworld veterans. You're making us the galaxy's enforcers? Captain Chen asked, looking amused. More like the galaxy's insurance policy. Representative Quixara explained. Your presence alone should prevent most conflicts from escalating. Representative Quixara. Representative Quixara. Captain Chen considered this. That's actually quite clever. Deterrence through reputation rather than actual violence. Exactly. Though we would appreciate having some human units available for extreme situations. Of course. We can detail some personnel for coalition service. I'll make sure to select our more diplomatic soldiers. As the session concluded and representatives began filing out, Veltar remained in his chamber, watching Captain Chen with professional respect and existential dread. "Captain," he called out, as she prepared to leave. "Yes, Sub-Commander? A question, if I may. The training we observed? You keep calling it basic training. What do you call the advanced programs?" Captain Chen's smile took on a predatory quality that reminded Veltar why humans had evolved on a Class 1-2 death world. "Advanced training varies by specialty," she replied. "But we have a saying in our military. The more you sweat in training, the less you bleed in combat." She paused at the chamber exit. "By the way, Sub-Commander, we'd be happy to host some coalition observers at our advanced training facilities. We have some very interesting programs you might want to study." "What kind of programs?" "Well, there's survival, evasion, resistance, and escape training. Combat diving. High-altitude operations. Arctic warfare. Desert operations. Urban combat." Captain Chen's smile widened. "And if you're really interested in advanced human military culture, I could arrange a visit to one of our war colleges. That's where we train our strategic and tactical leadership." As Captain Chen left the chamber, Veltar slumped in his seat. The humans were offering to share their advanced training methods with coalition forces. He wasn't sure whether this was the most generous gesture in galactic history or the most terrifying. Either way, he was absolutely certain he would be declining the invitation. In the months that followed, the mere mention of human involvement in galactic conflicts became more effective than entire fleet deployments. Pirates surrendered upon receiving messages that humans were en route. Border disputes resolved themselves when both sides learned that human peacekeepers would be mediating. The galaxy had discovered that sometimes the most effective weapon was simply the knowledge that somewhere in the darkness, warriors trained on a death world were watching and waiting, and they called it basic training.